they let in a lot of the fanboys to their plant.
Yeah.
And they came out with gushing coverage and videos. Oh my God, robots! Look, Tesla has robots in their plant.
Really?
And automated guided vehicle. Look at that. You know, they're so far ahead of everybody else because they didn't know. They have no clue what they're looking at compared to what's going on.
Yeah.
If you've never been in an assembly plant, it is kind of like Disney World. It's like,
I totally agree, Bob.
Oh, it's like
I totally agree.
But
you
it's
know,
also like
I was in
brain
a
surgery.
Hyundai plant in Alabama this week, and I mean, they even have plexiglass that the robots are behind. I mean, so it even seems more like an amusement park. I mean, it's just like,
But it's also like brain surgery. You can't be off by a millimeter.
That's right.
It's got to be right on. Everything, the welds.
Every time.
Every time. Yep.
well, that's what makes manufacturing so interesting and so measurable. You made it or you didn't. It was good or it was not.
Yep.
I mean, it's so metrically measurable.
Yeah. I know for my crappy old British cars, though, that you could have something that was really crappy one year and it looks exactly the same the next year and there's changes under the skin. But nowadays you get one chance to get it right. You really do, because competition is such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a tough business.
It is tough.
That's why I've got all the respect, you know,
Yeah.
for companies like Karma here. Okay. I think we're going to get going. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems. Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world. And by DIA MTS, for advanced manufacturing machinery and lightweight components.
All right, everybody, welcome to Autoline After Hours, especially you, Gary.
how you been?
Really good. I say that every single week, but it's true. It's absolutely true.
I'm glad to hear that.
Okay, so how are you feeling?
I'm doing great. Got a flu shot today,
Oh, jeez.
so I'm good.
You're good for the winter.
I'm getting ready for the winter, yeah.
All right.
So I recommend you all get flu shots.
Okay.
That's my public service announcement for the day.
Your PSA. Okay, we got to let everybody know. Richard Truett from Automotive News is with us on today's show. Richard, great to have you here.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Yeah. And our special guest for the first half of the show is Bob Kruse, the CTO, Chief Technology Officer of Karma. And you've brought in the Karma Revero for us to take a look at. In fact, you let me drive one for the last couple of days, which has really helped out. But first, Bob, thanks for being on the show and bringing the car.
Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for letting us bring our latest edition, and thanks for spending a couple of days and letting me know your thoughts.
Okay, so just so everybody can get up to speed who isn't all that familiar with this started out as the Fisker Karma. That company went out of business, and a new one is growing out of it.
Yep, about 5 years ago, those assets were bought, and we formed a company called Karma. So we took the car name and named it the company. And then we launched our first vehicle back in the June of 2017, the Karma Revero. And now we're in the process of launching our second vehicle, the 2020 Karma Revero GT. And we have more derivatives coming.
So you guys are a real car company, right? I mean,
We are. We are. I mean,
design
we got
stuff,
we
make
got the
stuff?
whole. We design it, we engineer it, we build it, and we sell it. So we have dealerships, all over North America and a few international. And this car drives as well as it looks.
Moreover, you took the basic Fisker Karma. This car is substantially upgraded from that.
There's very little left. Okay, this vehicle, all of the exterior is all new. The only thing that stayed is the glass. Every other surface is new. The front end new. The rear end's new. The drivetrain is where all the really special stuff happens. So we start I'll start in the rear. It's got 536 horsepower of electric machine in the rear. It's two electric motors coupled to a new gearbox. That's actually two gearboxes in one. So we deliver torque to the right side separate from the left side. Over the air, probably the first quarter of next year, will enable torque vectoring for all of our customers. The battery down the middle is new. We moved to an NMC chemistry. The size is up from 18 kilowatt hours to 28 kilowatt hours. So we get up to 80 miles on that. And it is an electric vehicle because all the torque is generated by those 536 horsepower of electric machines. But unlike a battery-only vehicle, we have an onboard generator. So when it's not convenient to charge, we can make our own electricity and not have to wait a long period of time. And so our onboard generator is now powered by a 3-cylinder BMW turbo engine, a 1.5-liter engine that drives a electric machine, a generator that lets you sustain your propulsion. Well, you got a chance. I'll let you talk about the driving experience.
No, it's really good. I mean, you know, the range extender, as it were, the BMW engine is very unobtrusive. You know, it's only when you really go into launch mode and some other cases where you really hear it.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a big sedan. What's the weight on it?
About 5,000 pounds.
But it hauls ass.
Yeah, we took about 400 pounds out of it, but it goes 0 to 60 as it sits here in about 4.5 seconds. And we have faster versions coming.
Yeah, that's the GT, eh?
Yeah.
Bob, what is an NMC battery?
Nickel, manganese, cobalt. So there's all kinds of lithium ion. Okay,
Right.
the old lithium ion battery was an iron phosphate, so it had an iron and phosphate in it. We are now moved to an NMC chemistry. Still, lithium ion has greater energy density, so we get more electrons per liter or per kilogram than we did with previous chemistry. So it let us bump our battery-only range from 50 to 80 miles.
And do you plug this in and fuel it, or?
Yeah, there's on this side of the car, there's a traditional gas tank, and on the other side, there's an electric port that you can do level 1 or 110 charging, level 2 or 220 charging, or DC fast charging, where the charger's off the vehicle and you connect directly to the battery and put 100 amps at 400 volts and charge it super fast.
Bob, I'm always interested in the engineering and technology part of the car.
Me too.
If I'm in the market for a car like this and I've got about $150,000 to spend, why am I going to buy your car over an Audi e-tron or an I-Pace or some of the more established car?
Porsche Taycan.
Taycan from some of the more established automakers.
First is looks.
Okay.
Okay, it's a highly styled vehicle. And then, our reason for being is where technology and luxury come together.
Yep.
We couple that with a VVIP experience. Together with, we can customize and build you anything you want. People that are in the premium luxury market, they don't want what everybody else has. So those 3 pillars of our brand are what make us very unique and is our selling or value proposition.
But I know I can trust a Mercedes or a Porsche. How have you tested that to make sure that when people drive it through Death Valley or if they go to Vermont in December, it's going to work right?
Great question. My weekly mileage report on this 2020 Revero, I've got my vehicles up to, I think, 1,137,000 miles of hard test miles that we put on them. So we prove it out so you don't have to.
But to the point, the vehicles that Richard mentioned are all fully electric vehicles, and yours has a different powertrain architecture. Is there an advantage to this approach versus the full EV approach?
Well, I mean, it's the advantage is that it's an electric vehicle, so you get all of the benefit. The big attribute of electric vehicle is you get maximum torque at 0 RPM, okay, or basically any time. So it's a very torquey, very powerful. It's when you've driven an electric vehicle and you go back to a conventional vehicle where you have a torque curve and you have to wait for your power, it's not so satisfying. But one of the dilemmas with an EV, you have a long time to charge, so you can't just go fill up in 5 minutes and get a whole lot more energy. So when it's not convenient to charge, we have the ability to make our own electricity, and it still propels the vehicle and drives almost as the same level of performance. So for example, if you wanted to drive from LA to Vegas and you were in a battery vehicle, you'd have to plan a couple hours to charge. In this vehicle, you just make your own electricity and continue to drive all the way to Vegas, and you can charge again once you got there. Okay.
Hey, we got some questions coming in. Kit Garhart says, wasn't the Fisker Karma a really crude, noisy, unreliable plug-in hybrid? Is the renamed Mark II version any different? Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience, this is a very well-engineered and well-developed car. I never got a chance to drive the original Fisker, but Kit, I don't think you'd have any problems with this car whatsoever.
I mean, this is a highly refined super luxury vehicle. The exhaust system, I mean, has a lot of technology in it. So we exhaust below the A pillars, which is not where you'd really choose to do it. But what we've done is we've got a very sophisticated exhaust system that has valves in it. So under light load, it all comes out the passenger side. And then under wide open throttle sport mode, the valve opens, and we've done some very unique things with the tuning of the exhaust. So it doesn't really sound like a little 3-cylinder engine.
No, not at all.
It sounds like a very throaty, robust, powerful luxury machine. And the vehicle has all electric, a sustain where you maintain the battery, and then sport where you get the best of the generator and the best of the battery. Each one of those modes is distinctly different, and you can comment on your experience driving it.
Yeah, you know, you start out and it's in pure electric mode. You use the left-hand paddle behind the steering wheel. You can hit what I think you call sustain,
Yep.
where it's both the engine and electric, but the engine makes sure the battery sustains its
And it's very quiet. It's very quiet. You can barely hear it.
Right, and then you can go into sport mode, which also allows you then to go into launch mode. And launch mode's very easy to set up. You know, in some cars you got to go on the center console and go through screen menus and all that. With the Karma, all you do is you plant your foot firmly on the brake, you push the accelerator pedal fully to the floor, and then on the instrument cluster right behind the wheel shows up a number of traffic semaphores, just like the start of a Formula One race, you know, where the red lights come on and they go down in sequence.
We're waiting for the generator to come up to full power.
And as soon as you get to that last red light and it goes out, boom, just take your foot off the brake and the car shoots forward.
So when you're in sustain mode, I mean, is this highway speed or is this
Any speed.
slow speed?
Okay, so the vehicle always launches electrically, so we never use the generator. No matter what mode, it always launches. The generator doesn't start till 25 miles an hour. And then in sustain, what it does is it maintains whatever state of battery charge you're at, and you can drive and maintain that. So in some parts of the world, you can only drive electric in the city center. You can save your battery till later, okay? And then sport lets you use the generator and the battery till its fullest, you know, to create all. You need both of those to satisfy the 536 horsepower in the rear to get maximum acceleration.
Bob, you had a long career at General Motors before you took your current assignment, and one of the cars you worked on was the Chevrolet Volt.
That was the last one, yes.
So were some of the things you learned about making a hybrid car feel good in terms of the transitions and from engine, you know, from electric to gasoline and how it feels and sounds, did that influence you?
Oh, absolutely. You know, one of the things that you learn when doing an electric vehicle, because electric machines are so quiet and you don't always have an internal combustion engine droning off in the background, it causes the rest of your vehicle to have to be that much quieter. You have to have, you know, your tire noise has to be less, your wind noise has to be less. Everything has to be less because you don't have a large level of background noise. The other, you know, when you look, our vehicle has regenerative braking, and you know the blending of the regenerative brakes to the friction brakes. If you don't do that well, it can be very obtrusive to the driver. We've done an excellent job. We give selectable regen, so the driver can select between a conventional vehicle, let off the accelerator and it coasts, or full regen 3, you get maximum regen, so you can do more one-pedal driving, so you don't ever have, in many conditions, you don't ever have to put your foot on the brake, so the friction brakes tend to last a very, very long time, and then regen 2 is somewhere in between.
Yeah, I see you have Brembos on the
Yes, we do. Our friction brakes are Brembo, multi-caliber Brembo brakes, big ones.
So what's the purchase process like? I would go to a dealer, order one, wait a couple months for it to be built. Would I buy one off the showroom floor? How's that going to work?
Both, okay. Actually, we have cars in inventory. We have cars in inventory in the plant that the dealers can pull very quickly. If you want a unique combination, you know, we can build that rapidly as well. And then we offer customization. So if you want a purple car with a pink interior, we'll build it for you, okay? But in our level of customization and craftsmanship, lets everybody, if they want a unique, one-of-a-kind Karma Revero, they can have it.
And how long will it take Richard to get that car? I know he's got his eye on that.
It depends upon what we have to do, and we will do just about anything if that's what the customer wants. It's time and money, and it can vary.
We got another question here. Mark K wants to know, what kind of warranty do you offer on the car?
Well, the battery is warranted for 8 years, okay, and the vehicle itself is a 4-year bumper-to-bumper warranty.
Gotcha. And then another one, Joey's cleaning lady wrote in to say that 28 kilowatt hours for the battery, he thinks it sounds low.
Nope. 28 kilowatt hours is a lot, and we
Because this is a plug-in hybrid, not a pure battery electric.
This is not battery electric. It's not our only source. So if a battery electric vehicle might have 100 kilowatt hours, okay? If that's what you have to pay for all that battery, even though you may not use it. You have to haul all that mass around all the time. And so, you can think of this as a Goldilocks solution, okay? 80% of the U.S. population drives 40 miles a day or less. We have 80 miles of range on the battery. If that's your demographics, like when I drive around California, I couldn't tell you the last time I bought petroleum because all of my needs are met electric. But when I do want to drive to Vegas, I'm not inconvenienced to drive to Vegas. Or I went up to Pebble Beach. That was the last time I bought gas, to be very honest with you, to drive up to Pebble Beach, and it was a great drive up PCH.
How long was the drive?
Took me about 8 hours.
I mean, in terms of distance from where you guys are.
Up to
Northern
Pebble Beach.
California.
It was probably like 350 miles or so.
Mm-hmm.
Bob, when you're a small automaker, you don't often get to pick and choose the best parts from your suppliers.
Yeah.
They want to save the stuff for their bigger customers. There's a really cool story about the radio in the Karma. Would you tell us how you guys developed that radio?
Sure. I wanted a very premium audio system in the vehicle. In a luxury car, that's part of what you have to have.
Yep.
So if we'd have gone to all the big brand name, you make it, I'm very low volume. I'm not the most attractive customer to any of them. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't have got their A team, their B team, or their C team. I would have got, their
The going out of production radio.
Yeah.
And then they would have sold me, 2 or 3 generations old worth of hardware. Mm-hmm. And then they would have charged me a very large premium because I'm a low volume, so on and so forth. So what we did is we did it ourselves. So we engineered an audio system called Soloscape. We branded it ourselves. It's over 1,100 watts peak. We have 10 audio sources. We went to a new advanced audio architecture called A2B. Everybody else will go to that, I think, over time. What it does is it moves all the smarts into the radio head out of the amp. And so then what we did is we used physics and the speed of sound, that we staged the sound so that all 10 sources, the audio from that source arrives at the driver's ear at exactly the same nanosecond. Or if you want to stage it for both front passengers, we'll restage it for both front passengers. Or if there's 4 people, we'll stage it for the center of the car. And you can really hear when you stage it how different it is. Plus, it's super powerful. Okay, we got plenty of power, plenty of clarity. I've had other people describe it as one of the best or the second best audio systems they've ever heard. So we did it ourselves. We did it with a handful of really smart, hardworking men and women. And the audio system, if you will, speaks for itself.
Yeah,
you guys heard it. What do you think?
I can attest to the fact. I mean, it sounds super clear, very good clarity.
And then one more thing. Then we coupled it with new technology in our steering wheel controls. We have 3D touch-sensitive glass with haptic feedback for our steering wheel controls, which is an industry first. So,
in fact, we got a picture of it up here right
there you
now.
go.
It's that
There.
circular piece of glass.
So that's the
there.
piece of glass. You touch it, it touches back, so you feel it. So the down volume arrow, for example, you touch it lightly, it lowers the volume. If you push it deep, it mutes. Okay, so our lane keeping assist and ADAS is on the right side, our audio are on the left. We bring up instructions on either side of the cluster to aid you in learning that you can turn off once you learn the car and don't need it. But that is an industry first, and we're very proud of it. We did that in conjunction with Joyson.
Okay, I've got another question about the radio. Not about the radio, but what you've got on the radio. But first, we got to take a quick commercial break, and I'm giving a shout out to our good friends at Bridgestone. Okay, we're back talking all about the Karma Revero. And the one thing that flipped me out getting in this car and turning on the sound system, besides it being a really good sound system, is I'm listening to this radio station, KARM 950. I thought, 950? This is an AM radio. What the hell is this? And it's not Sirius radio. They don't have a channel 950 that I'm aware of. Then I find out it's your own bloody radio station. It's Karma Radio. It comes in over the internet. Tell us a little bit about how that all came to be.
Sure.
Because no car company in the world, to my knowledge, has ever had its own radio station.
Well, our street address is 9950, so we did the 950, then we did Karma. And so when we did this vehicle, we did not put terrestrial AM on it. Okay, we just, it's
Meaning getting it by antenna.
by antenna, yeah,
Right.
broadcast AM.
Right.
Okay, but we did put broadcast FM in it, and we didn't put satellite radio on it. We didn't really want to look at the antenna. We did put internet radio on it. Okay, so we can stream internet radio from anywhere in the country to anywhere in the country as long as we have a 3 or a 4G connection. So you can sit here and you can scan and you can play radio stations from Chicago or California over the air. We then also created our own radio station. Okay, that's the Karma Radio. We have the radio station will send us like album art or their logo,
Tends to be soft jazz.
whatever it is,
fusion jazz,
so we
whatever.
have a little picture of our SC1 show car from Shanghai up there. We play, jazz, some mellow music, nothing real out there. But what we do is instead of commercials, we play tips about your karma, things that you can learn. Maybe you didn't know about it, maybe you learned, or to be able to, learn to use more about your karma or about karma in general.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great marketing tool.
Bob, you guys developed a radio, okay, which seems crazy for a car.
An audio
company.
system.
An audio, well, okay. But the thing I'm wondering about is as Richard pointed out, you're a very small company. How do you leverage working with people? I mean, do you find smart people and hire them, or do you find smart people and work with them? I mean, what's
All
the...
of we do partnerships. Like we have a great partnership that we've talked about at CES with BlackBerry QNX, where they do all of our connectivity and our cybersecurity and help us manage all that over the air update. I mentioned earlier we partnered with Joyson to be the industry's first 3D touch sensitive. So we will partner with whoever we need to partner. We end up being a great opportunity because we're smart guys that can get to, smart men and women, that can get to market fast, where we can help tier ones get their technology into the market. Plus, we have a lot of our own patents. I mean, the patent that I'm most proud of is the center high mounted stoplight, the long red light that every car has. Karma owns the patent that when you plug your car in, that light becomes a bar graph, okay, and tells you the state of charge of your battery. It wakes up, it first tells you whether you got a good connection or a bad connection, then it tells you the state of charge of your battery. You can wake it up from the key fob and it will tell you from a distance where you're at, and when you unplug it, it will wake up and tell you the state of charge. You got a chance to experience it. John, what'd you think?
No, I love it. What can I tell you?
It's very intuitive, and it's our patent.
Mm-hmm. Bob, the question that every automotive executive dreads is talking about future product, but you're among journalists, and so you can't escape it. No car company makes it with just one product. Can you peel back the curtain a little bit and tell us what's in the future for Karma?
Sure, I'd be happy to. First off, we have the GTS, a performance version of this that we will be unveiling at the LA Auto Show later on in the fall. I know you'll all be there. Come to our stand. And I won't give you any specifics, but this is very fast, and our GTS is even faster. We've also announced what we call as a Project Eclipse, which is a new battery electric platform that we have a whole host of vehicles, some very unique vehicles, and then some more traditional sedans, coupes, and convertibles that we will draw from. Now, we've not announced any specific timing, but it's a very innovative platform that lets us, as a small luxury manufacturer, take a variety of products off of it.
Would some of those newer vehicles be lower priced and more aimed at more mainstream buyers?
They'll be a little lower priced, but I mean, we are not going down market. Okay, we are going to continue to build luxury vehicles with technology.
This BEV, is it a skateboard sort of thing like we're hearing more about?
I think the skateboard is a little bit, yeah, you could say it's skateboardish, but yes.
So you'll be able to put different types of...
Yes. Okay, and
Top hats
the
on it.
battery will be part of the chassis.
Okay, along these lines, Doc Wolf wrote in to ask, Fisker had several other cars on the drawing board, the Fisker Atlantic and the Sunset. You going to do any of those?
I'm here to talk about Karma and what Karma's doing.
Okay.
And we have a lot of great Karmas that are beautiful and drive as well as they look.
Okay, another quick one then. Dan Neal wrote in to ask, kilowatts per kilogram, what's the power density? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I'd have to look it up off the top of my head. We're not at the bleeding edge of energy density, whether it's gravimetric or volumetric. We're kind of in the middle. And then I do have future generations of battery for this vehicle that will be more battery, more energy density, and more battery-only EV range that will come in future model years.
And we should mention, this is a California car through and through.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit more about that, especially the manufacturing.
Okay, well, we are a California company. Our headquarters is in Irvine. Our assembly center is in, I think we're the first company to build cars in Southern California in 30 years, okay? We've been doing it for a couple of years now, so I'm not here talking about what we're gonna do. I'm here talking about what we've done, which differentiates me from a lot of the California startups. So we already have a plant, we have a car in production, we have dealers, we're selling products today. We have our second generation vehicle coming out here. It's pure California. It looks like California. It smells like California. It drives like California. It's a wonderful experience. We even name our colors after California. The vehicle here in the studio, that color is called Napa Red. So
let me ask a very simple question. What is it made out of?
aluminum.
So it's all aluminum?
Nope, most of it's aluminum. The deck lid and the fenders are SMC. Okay, the faces are obviously not aluminum, but the structure, most of the doors, the quarters are all aluminum, and it's stamped, it's hydroformed, there's a variety of different, and it's welded, riveted, and a bunch of different attachment technologies that are appropriate, and it's fully homologated for all FMVSS and CMVSS and global safety standards and crashworthiness.
Another thing, we're only hitting some of the highlights here. We could go on for weeks about the details in this car, but talk about your screen on the center console there and how many different things you can configure and change with it.
Nope. Well, first off, we have and we do all of our graphics interface we do in-house, okay? We sit on top of a central information unit that does it, but we do our graphics for our center touchscreen, and it's done in conjunction with our primary display, and it lets you do all the traditional things, plus a lot of very unique things. Like we have a whole host of gauges that we can call up, and you can do a hill climb, a performance, an EV gauge, and we'll put those up, and you can select any gauge you want to throw it up to the cluster. We have a track mode that automatically, you start it, it notes your GPS location and calculates your lap time, shows tire pressure and temperature, copper temperature in the battery, power, G-forces, it's all driver oriented, and the guys have a great time putting, we call them Easter eggs inside the software, so it's new and unique things that really make driving the vehicle. And we talk about that on our radio station, so you learn more about your car as you drive it.
Mm-hmm. Bob, you mentioned you're in the premium luxury market. How many of these exist?
Well, these are pre-production, so they're in very limited quantities. This particular vehicle, we will build about 500 in the first year and sell them.
I also got a chance to drive it, John, earlier this summer. And I have to tell you, at Automotive News, I'm probably the harshest critic there is on startup companies.
I hear you're hard to convince.
And I got out of that car thinking, if they can get butts in seats, they'll sell cars.
Yeah.
It's really buttoned down tight, and it was not anything like what I was expecting. I didn't either get a chance to drive the Fisker, but I looked into it pretty closely when it was on the auto show circuit. That thing was not even half-baked. It might have been quarter-baked. And so there's no comparison. So you can stop mentioning the F word because there's there's no comparison. It's been completely re-engineered. And I also looked under the hood earlier today, and the way the powertrain is packaged, very professional looking. You can tell that experienced hands have been on that car.
You know, and here we got a picture of a look under the hood right now.
Yeah.
That's a great way to describe, you know, I described it as a true luxury car.
Yeah.
But Richard, I like the term that you're using there. The whole car is professionally done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not any kind of tinkering thing that happened in someone's backyard. No, there's, I don't know, Bob hasn't talked much about the team he's assembled, but I would guess there are pretty deep bench of product development guys from all over the place.
Yeah, good question. Did you put the team together or inherit a team that was there, or a combination?
Both. Okay, I came on board. There was a team in place, and we've obviously attracted additional talent. And it's, you know, we have experience from all the major OEMs globally, but we do it the Karma way. But we've also been able, you know, California is a technology-oriented state, so we've been able to pull out of aerospace and out of infotainment. And you know, my head of electrical he doesn't come from auto. Okay, he comes from consumer electronics. Okay, and we're able to bring a lot of that to the Karma experience.
Do you find having people from different industries working on a vehicle to be an advantage versus, I'm assuming when you were at GM, they were probably mainly car people that you'd work with?
Absolutely. I mean, if everybody thinks alike, you know, you get vanilla. Okay, so everybody's ideas come in. When I come to work with an idea and I say, "Hey guys, how about this?" It's amazing how quickly they latch onto it and do it, and actually say, "Hey, go drive it."
Well, that's the advantage of being a small startup, right? You can get things done way faster than you ever could have at GM or any big car company.
There's no bureaucracy, and that's the advantage of being at a small, scrappy startup. When you decide to do something, you do it and you drive it and you refine it, and you know, the vehicle speaks for itself.
Well, good. We're going to have to wrap up this segment of the show, but Bob, been great having you on. I can't wait to see what the GT is all about. What more performance? GTS, what you're able to get out of it performance-wise. That's going to be exciting to see.
It's a big difference.
Real good. Well, look, we're going to take another commercial break here. We're going to give a shout out to our new sponsor, DIAMTS, as well as Borg-Warner. And coming back in the second half of the show, we're going to have Steve Lietaert here. He's the president of Hella's center in the U.S., and he's got some cool stuff to talk about in lighting, but we'll be back in just a moment.
Whether they're electric, autonomous, or connected, tomorrow's cars must be developed quickly with the highest precision, and they have to be lightweight. DIAMTS can provide what you need, from advanced manufacturing machinery to lightweight components. Learn more at our website at www.d-iamts.com or visit our showroom right next to Metro Airport in Detroit.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what Borg-Warner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
All right, we're back for the second half of Autoline After Hours, and we've got Steve Lietaert here. He's the president of Hella Corporate Center. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John.
And Hella is what? One of the preeminent automotive lighting companies in the world. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we got a million things that we can talk to you about, but this whole move to autonomous vehicles, you know, I'd like to hear what Hella's thinking along those lines. Some people have said, oh, if cars can drive themselves, you don't even need headlights in the future. But what's going on with Hella and AVs?
That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of focus on that right now because obviously the industry is very interested on autonomous vehicles. And you're right, as you get to level 5 at the full end of AV, then of course you take the focus a little bit away from being able to see and put it on being seen in a deeper way. And in all the steps in between, of course, there'll be a lot of adaptations that you use with lighting because of the ability for the lighting to provide dynamic communication to the outside world, so a lot of different things that we see in the vehicle itself, as well as different changes on the vehicle interior that are driven through the lighting as well. So I think we'll see a lot of interesting adaptations there, and especially as you see with the introduction of more of the sensors in the vehicle and the more information available in the vehicle, you can start to do a lot more smart controls with the lighting. So we talk about with matrix beam orientations where you have basically the high beams on all the time, and then try to actively control the light distribution to place a light where you want it and to stop placing the light where you don't want it. You can think about all the things that you can do with the availability of the cameras and the radar and LiDAR sensors to be able to detect and classify objects and be able to spotlight them. And if you talk about going into high definition lighting and having, let's say, 10,000 pixels of light available, you can start to spot important objects of interest, like a pedestrian that you think maybe the vehicle recognizes as moving in front of the vehicle and be able to highlight them. Or even take the information you have from the headlamp and basically cascade things onto the road to give information to other drivers and to pedestrians.
So today, you guys have technology, though, that is rather amazing. I mean, you mentioned being able to control pixels. And so at the Frankfurt show, you guys showed a new system, a matrix system that controls 15,000 individual LED pixels.
That's correct, yeah, solid state lighting, that's correct.
So people can deploy this on their vehicles now.
Yeah, we're developing right now. We'll be in production, let's say, in 2 to 3 years with that technology.
And so what would that look like? I mean, for a car, I mean, it's got to have profound changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, by having that much more light available, just like, not like with a television set, of course, when you had a greater resolution aid available, you can do a lot of different things with the view. With it, when you're extending the light outwards like that, you can do very, very precise topics. Like if you think about having that glare-free high beam, the adaptive driving beam configuration where you have the high beams on all the time, you're trying to eliminate the glare that you give. So you want to, not give the basically the high beam lighting to the car in front of you or the cars coming at you. So we started to go into these glare-free high beam applications to kind of create these tunnels of darkness that then would dim down the lights so that you wouldn't put the high beam into the vehicle in front and create tunnels of darkness as cars were coming towards you. Well, now you can think about having with that many pixels available, you can do things like have the high beams on, but basically when you have reflective signs that may give feedback to the camera that you don't want to have, you can recognize the signs and then dim out that area. If you have pedestrians or bicyclists on the road at that time, you can recognize them and then basically dim out the part that would go towards their face, so that you're also not glaring specific faces of a pedestrian on the street. As well as then you can do neat things too, not just from a safety standpoint with that spotlighting that we mentioned, but you can also do some neat things with basically characterizing and individualizing the vehicle by putting logos on the ground. With the welcome routine, you could even customize it so that the vehicle would recognize you as a driver versus your wife, and when you walk up to the vehicle, you can even say, welcome to you specifically, or do neat things like that with the light because you have so much more resolution. So it becomes endless, basically.
A lot of sensor integration with this. I mean, in order to make these determinations, whether it's Richard or me or John or you, how do you work that all out?
Well, of course, with that, we're providing the light, but then there's somewhere a compute platform that's determining all those aspects. So the idea is that as the technology for the lighting is evolving, so is the technology for all of the sensing activities. So then you're starting to use the availability of the cameras and the LiDAR sensors, the radar, and other aspects of the sensing to be able to allow the vehicle to be able to determine those different attributes, like who the person is or where they're at, and then you work in conjunction with the technology to be able to do things with the light to like actuate or realize some neat feature in a visible way that's coming from the availability of the information in the vehicle. So just kind of marrying the increase of the technology and the increase of the content and the hardware they have in the vehicle to work in unison to in the end deliver let's say a more individualized approach for a vehicle, or again implementing the safety technologies too.
Mm-hmm. Steve, there's a curmudgeon in every crowd, and it's not these guys today. It's me. So let me tell you,
Thanks for the warning.
when I go to the auto parts store and buy a 7-inch round glass headlight for one of my old cars, it's $15.
Yeah.
If my Mini Cooper needs a headlight, it's $1,500. And if I have a Cadillac Escalade and need a tail light, it's thousands of dollars. Are we ever going to get back to when lights were affordable and simple that the do-it-yourself guy could take care of?
That's a good question. I mean, in the end, of course, a lot of those aspects had to do with the fact that you had commodities, right? Sealed beam lamps were the same on multiple platforms, and then you could buy them at the store, and it fit into different manufacturers and vehicles, and that was great from that standpoint in terms of low cost, both when they were manufactured and also when you're replacing them. But in the end, of course, they had no character. And now the lighting is such an important part of the character of a vehicle.
The styling.
The styling, the brand differentiation, the excitement. I mean, you see that, when we do all these different studies, you see that when people look at the profiles of vehicles that are very common, they have difficulty to recognize them. But when you look at, let's say, the rear of the tail lamps, people can recognize certain manufacturers right away. Yep. So you want to have that highly, that stylized aspect to be able to differentiate the vehicle. So by doing that, you then make things more complex inherently, right? So you have, you're trying to work with very tight package spaces. You're trying to create a light source with the flexibility with LED. You no longer have a single light source that you're trying to spread or control, but you can place the light source in exactly the place that you want it to be and control it differently. So as a result of that, then you have printed circuit boards with LEDs mounted to them that may stretch through the shape or configuration of let's say, the sweep that you're trying to show in the light. So they get a little bit more complex. So to replace the lamp, to do the lamp replacements, they're more costly in some of those cases when they're very stylized. And the light source isn't easy to replace because the light source is typically a printed circuit board. So it's not as easy to be able to access parts of a lamp that may need to be replaced in order to change that out.
That's something that people need to realize. With LED headlamps, you've got these printed circuit boards, you've got heat sinks, you've got all the electronics, in fact.
Correct.
So, everybody thinks, well, geez, it's just a little LED. Well, would that was all it was.
Right.
I want to say Audi, and I'm sure it's others as well, actually have little cooling fans because the heat sink alone is not enough. So you've got a big piece of equipment. But Richard raises a good point because, the headlamps and the taillights are at the extreme corners of the car. First thing that gets damaged in an accident, and that drives up repair costs.
Yeah, very true. But we do see, of course, the amount of repair does decrease over time because of the implementation of all the safety devices that we have in vehicle. With ESP is one building block for that, and of course now with driver assistance systems, with the blind spot detection, rear view camera, et cetera. Of course, we're seeing less of those types of collisions, but they will occur nonetheless, and there is more expense behind that. But in the end, the reliability of the lamp is also improved. I mean, you certainly can have failures, but the fact that you have a semiconductor as a light source also increases the reliability over life because you don't have anything that's filament based that can go bad in that regard.
Do these modern lights that are out now, do they use less energy or more than the classic old round headlights?
Yeah, so they use less, they consume less power. Of course, now when you have all these great features you want to deliver, sometimes you can drive the power consumption up. Right, but you get to a much lower power state. And that's why, that's one of the big contributors to why we have LED in vehicle. I mean, one, it enables a lot of the, these highly stylized implementations. You can do a lot with the technology in terms of the active controls. And then the reliability is improved overall. But at the same time, basically the power consumption is a big driver for that because in the end, you see especially on EVs, you would only ever see an EV with LED lights because you wouldn't be able to waste the extra 20 or 30 watts per headlamp on a filament-based light source. So that has also been driving a lot of the LED migration. And really, you see, it's it's been a very quick migration overall. So you see some amount of LED in basically every vehicle that you buy, if not the full extent of the light sources now.
Steve, do your engineers work with the stylists at the car companies in terms of developing these exotic-looking lights, or is it basically you guys just sell them the LEDs and let them figure it out?
No, absolutely. There's a lot of interface, and that's what makes it a very exciting field because you're working very closely at the very early phase of the vehicle development with the studio of the customer. So basically, they're coming up with different concepts and then working with the supply base actively to say, I want to do this. And then you try to give them a feasibility analysis to say, is it possible or not? And then try to realize what they've envisioned overall. And again, the LED and these other technologies have been the enabler to allow for that to occur, so that you can have more than a point light source that you're emitting, but actually create the legal outputs of the lamps in a way that is very stylized and exactly looking the way that you want. So there's a lot of activity between the studio and through our engineering at the OEMs through to the supply base.
We know there's a lot of different regulations around the world governing lighting. Does that complicate your life, or can you handle it all now with software with just the same basic unit?
The regulatory aspects, of course, are still complicated, but you're right. The simulation tools that we have evolved very rapidly as well, because they're necessary in order for us to be able to reduce the development cycle and ensure that we don't waste more money in the development phase. We have to do a lot through simulation in order to be able to ensure that we're hitting the right light pattern to meet the legal requirements in the different marketplaces and to follow all the regulatory controls.
Hey, I'd like to get into more of the regulatory stuff in a minute. There's actually an important question I want to ask you. But first, another commercial break. We're giving a shout out to our good friends at Lietaert.
Lietaert Connexus offers a parental controls application with geofencing that sends notifications regarding driving behavior and location, including curfew alerts, acceleration alerts, and speed alerts. All delivered to a smartphone application that includes vehicle location, driver notifications, and a report card of driving history, including notifications when predefined geographic boundaries are crossed. For more information, visit Lietaert.com.
All right, we're back talking about all kinds of things with lighting. And the one that I wanted to get into on the regulatory aspect is, you talked about all those pixels that turn on and off so you can create dark corridors and not blind oncoming drivers. Is the government going to let that happen? And let me preface that. I remember in the 1970s, where in the US we went from round headlamps, GM pioneered square headlamps. It was a war to get NHTSA to approve those, just to go from round to square. In fact, in the end, GM sort of just went ahead and did it anyway, and then let NHTSA approve it later on. So when you talk about turning off pixels and all these kind of stuff, can you do that legally in the U.S.?
Yeah, well, we did have an FMVSS 108 that was written, I think, in 1968, that limited the dynamics of the light beam, right? Because they had written that under the context of never envisioning that you'd have semiconductors that could actually, do this in a good way. So of course you have limitations from that, but because of the implementation of the adaptive driving beam heavily in Europe, and then also having the adoption of that technology wanting to be employed here in North America, Canada stepped forward first, and then the U.S. Last year in terms of updating basically the legislation to be able to allow for adaptive driving beam. There's still some limitations in terms of the implementation that is being worked through right now, but the technology will come and it'll be on the streets and in a short time frame. And I think when you start to see that the availability of the adaptive driving beam with having the high beams on at all times, I think the American consumer will also recognize its value. Because if you can, especially if you're driving in areas where you don't have a heavy prevalence of street lights, the idea of having the high beams on with that additional reach that you have, giving you all that additional information at the distance, gives you an extensive amount of more reaction time. And then having also illumination on the sides of the roads to see basically potential problems like a deer that may cross a road or a pedestrian. To have all that information available it actually makes the driving experience much more relaxed when you're driving, right? Because you do feel like you have all that information.
Steve, what is the extent to which the lens is very important in these things? I mean, does it have more or less of an impact on what we see on the road?
The outer lens itself has less impact versus the other lenses that you have in front of the light source. So then you may have several optics in front of the light source that are really collecting the light and then controlling it and emitting the way that you want it to go. Of course, the outer lens has an impact overall in that regard, but that's it's there more from a protection standpoint, let's say, to protect and give the slope and protect the insides of the light.
We were talking earlier about how difficult it is for startup companies that deal in very low volume vehicles to get in front of tier one suppliers like Hella. Are you guys interested in working with Rivians and Karma and Bollinger and all the other guys that are coming up. Is that something, that business you want to deal with?
Well, yeah, we're always open to talk with the customers and see what they're looking for from us and see if we can find a win-win opportunity for both companies. And many times you see that they, although the volume may not be as large, they may have very exciting implementations that you can bring forth because they tend to be willing to basically go more on the cutting edge of technology and let's say they're willing to take on more risks in that regard because they don't have, as Bob was mentioning, they make a decision and they just do it. They don't have so many limitations in place. So that can be an exciting aspect as well to work with some of the startups in that regard.
For the most part, if they can dream it, can you build it?
To a large extent, I would say. To a large extent.
Hey, we've talked all kinds of exterior lighting, changing the pixels and all that, puddle lights, and
Sure.
what about inside the car? What are you doing there? What are we going to see coming in the next few years?
Well, that's a very good question because again, the lighting can have a big impact in terms of the styling and also in the interior. You can do a lot with functionality and also with ambiance. So right now you see much more implementation of these more elaborate ambient light systems. So basically having nice implementations of the light guides that are emitting light, that are like streaming through the interior of the vehicle along the headline. There's A pillars, B pillars, along the door panels, the dashboard, et cetera. That you can even change the color of the light, of course, from one color to the other, and even do things with having chasing lights. And then you think about evolving that with having those lights available inside. You can start to do more with HMI. So you can use it as part of your warning routine. So in addition to having, let's say, in the things like lane departure warning or active collision alert, you can imagine doing audible, haptic, and then even visual stimulation in terms of the warning to be able to light and change from maybe an amber to a red, for instance, in that regard. And then we see, as we get further into the autonomous vehicle thoughts and going through level 3, 4, 5, you think about the aspect that the vehicle interior can change from a driver's cockpit to an office or a living room. So then the lighting needs change drastically between those different scenarios. So then you look at having to have aspects where you want to maybe have a much different illumination. If you want to have then, let's say working in an office setting, you want to have maybe more active controls of where the light goes. And there we even see that even in vehicle today where we have basically that matrix orientation on the interior lighting where you have an array of LEDs and then you have a control to be able to pinpoint where you want to have the light going. If you want to have the laptop here or the laptop there to control that, for instance, already getting in place now. And then you can imagine if you start to move the seats in the configuration, if you go into like a living room space when you get more to the level 4 or 5, you can imagine that we'll want to have maybe a lighting that isn't seen during the day, but then illuminates within a broad base to change the the room setting to feel like with an uplit feel in the space itself to feel more comfortable and relaxing. And even from a functionality standpoint, you can start to look at using light as a factor that falls along with the circadian rhythms of the body. So you can think about when you want disengagement from the driving function into relaxation mode that you can basically change to the the warmer color temperatures in order to be able to calm and relax the person. But then when they want to get reengaged or the vehicle wants you to get reengaged, to do stimulation of the person to go to the the higher color temps and maybe in a bright light and maybe from a different angle to be able to activate your mind in a way to alert you and make you ready for that different change in the driving behavior.
Steve, I was looking into the most recent Hella annual report. Now, you're a German-based company. There was a whole lot of emphasis on the electrification of vehicles and Hella's involvement in that. Is that something that's just going on in Europe and in China, or are you guys here in North America dealing with that as well? Oh, no, of course, we're dealing with that here as well. I mean, the electrification is the other big trend, of course, we have in the industry, and it's important to stay focused on that. So what we've tried to look at is to also be pragmatic in our approach into electrification. So we look at full electric vehicles with doing like lithium-ion battery management systems to be able to control the charging of the cells. But because the volumes for full EV is still going to be quite slow, and the progression towards that will take some time, where the ICE will survive for quite some time. We see that there'll be a very, let's say, a slow progression towards that, but with increased levels of electrification. So we've been trying to provide also the components that are enabling and assisting
deeper electrification of the vehicle itself. So in a small, starting with doing basically aspects of electrical actuators in the vehicle that are taking pneumatic drain off of the engine as you're starting to downsize the ICEs and then trying to electrify certain controls and certain movements in the vehicle. And then a big aspect was going first into the micro-hybrids, were the start-stop systems that we became very actively involved in intelligent battery sensing. Because of course, if the vehicle is going to shut the vehicle off, it better be certain that it can restart it. So you're looking at state of charge, state of health, and those things. So that we started working on that aspect, and then growing a little bit more into then what we call the mild hybrids, where you have an ICE but with, let's say, a dual voltage powertrain. Power net, so having the 48 and 12 volt systems. And there we believe that will be a very large growing segment, and we see some industry analysts think that segment will be 30 to 35 million vehicles by 2030, which is obviously then taking over more than a third of the marketplace. And so there we work in that space as well. And of course, if you think about the, having the 2 voltage power nets, you have the ability then to have with the 48 volt systems, better, much more efficient driving of powertrain and chassis devices, but still having your 12 volt system for a lot of convenience aspects.
And your lights.
Lights, exactly, exactly, and other aspects, in the interior and the body controls. And for that, we're doing. We started working on DC to DC converters to work between both of the power nets. And actually have some neat things working on there with dual voltage battery management systems, where you look at the fact today when you implement that, you have 2 batteries, a 48 volt and a 12 volt battery. So we've been working on doing one basic unit that would fit into, let's say, the space occupied today by a standard 12 volt lead acid battery, and placing one unit in that would be lithium ion battery, doing both 48 and 12 volt, and having the integrated electronics to be able to work between both power nets and do the active controls of the cell management in between.
Would you guys do the battery or just the controller for the battery?
Well, we would buy the cells, and then we would basically do the controls of that, and then the active packaging design, et cetera. But we'd buy the cells from someone else.
Interesting.
We've got a number of questions coming in here from the audience. Joey's cleaning lady says, I just installed a Hella relay harness for my headlamps in my classic Jeep. Best $22 I ever spent. So we've been talking all about the future stuff, but here's somebody who appreciates the past.
That's great. Glad to hear it.
Yeah. RWD Please One says, what about headlight lenses yellowing?
Yeah, well, that was a little bit of a historical topic when we first went from glass to plastic materials for the lenses.
But you guys don't spec that, right? It's the OEM that specs it?
Yeah, they spec it, but of course we were also involved in the design development of those topics in the past. But the OEM spec that. But now we've gotten to the point where everything is a plastic outer lens. So you have a much better material evolution, as well as having coatings that you apply that protect against that type of premature cracking that creates that cloudy appearance in the yellowing.
Here's an interesting question. B. Wilson 4 Web asks, is Hella working on non-visible light sources and cameras for advanced driver assistance?
So looking at basically infrared light in order to be able to illuminate.
I guess. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. We have looked at those different topics, because you can, of course, emit the light at a wavelength that's non-visible, and in certain cameras may be able to, let's say, perform better by having still some type of visibility from the imaging system, even at nighttime. So there's been a number of those different evaluations in place.
Yeah, and here we've got another suggestion. Are you into solar roofs?
Solar roofs.
I mean, does Hella work in photovoltaics at all?
Yeah, no, we don't. We would do maybe something with power management in that regard, because that would kind of fit into our space of expertise, but not doing the photovoltaics themselves, because those are typically much more the glass companies, let's say, that are manufacturing those types of panels or cells.
Okay, this might be a tricky one. So I read that you're working with a startup company called Lightfield Lab on nanoparticle-based light guides for 3D image creation. What the hell is that?
Well, that one I'm not so deeply involved in that topic itself.
And another thing that I was just exposed to is what they call micro LEDs. I mean, things that are so small they almost look like flecks of dust. Is that what you guys are working on too, of making super small LEDs that you could use for displays?
Yeah, so we don't do the semiconductor manufacturing, but we work very closely with the semiconductor suppliers in order to try to realize a light source that helps us out. So as you mentioned earlier about the solid state lighting, for instance, that's basically essentially compacting many different LEDs into a small chipset to have those different higher pixelation available from the light source itself. So trying to work with them to say what our needs are in order to be able to deliver the end product of the system itself, and that's what you actually see is a lot of that type of activity to bring forth small small phosphor patches, let's say on a chip with let's say the 15,000 different pixels generated from that. So each one individually addressable to turn on and off or increase the power, but all done at the semiconductor level. So it's incredible technology.
You guys must be among the happiest suppliers in the business. You've gone from basically a commodity part to a very high-tech, high-value component now. That's a kind of a rare thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it's good to be in the right place at the right time, let's say, regarding that, and so we've been very fortunate. And actually to be part of delivering such an important part of the vehicle in terms of its characterization, its styling, the branding that you can deliver through lighting, but also the safety relevance of that, of course, is quite important because we don't always think about lighting as a safety relevant device, but obviously when you're driving at night, it's one of the first and most important aspects of safety because it delivers your visibility, what you see. So it's been great to be involved and be part of that space, especially during the evolution of the technology itself.
John, could you ask Joe, the cleaning lady, the part number of that Hella product? I might be able to use that on something in my garage.
Okay, Joey, you heard the question. He's interested in the part number.
No.
We're going to have to wrap this up, but first we have one phone call. Actually, we've got two phone calls, but Clem, who called, I think we answered your question in the course of the conversation, so we're not going to bring your call in. But Dale Leonard did make a call here, and we want to end the show with this.
Hi, John. Dale Leonard out of Cleveland, Ohio. I want to take this time to thank you, Gary, the Autoline staff, and the wonderful Autoline family for the support that everybody gave me during my recent throat cancer surgery. You can tell I'm almost back, a little gravelly, but great show. Love you guys. You're the best. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for that, Dale. We really appreciate it, and so good to hear you sounding pretty healthy there.
I think he sounds like he always sounds. I think he's better than he thinks he is.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Well, we're going to wrap up, but Steve, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for
Very
having me.
interesting. I mean, lighting, holy moly, it's everywhere, and what you guys are doing from a technology standpoint, very impressive.
Great, thanks a lot. I really appreciate the discussion, guys.
And you probably got a good aftermarket business for Richard.
And Richard, great having you on the show, too.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
And Gary, we're off next week.
Yes.
But we're back in 2 weeks, and I think Bob Lutt's coming on the show at that point. So
Oh boy,
you
you
guys
better
aren't
batten
gonna
hatches down for that one.
Yeah, batten down the hatches is right. But thanks, everybody, for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems. Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world. And by DIA MTS, for advanced manufacturing machinery and lightweight components.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.